Mandy, am I safe to assume that your interest into the commodity market is largely focused around protein substitutions and food grade commodity sources of hemp? I've watched through your videos and I get this, like that's what the background of your interest is. And I thought if you'd enlighten upon that just a little bit.
I'm really passionate about connecting the people within the industry, and I believe where the industry is going, there's a need for discussion around the grain and fiber production. And so I really where my passion is, and I kind of sit in a unique spot in the sense that I don't have an invested interest in a business other than this association. And my true interest really is about the people and highlighting those that are doing it right. So, no, not yet. Do I have a specific interest? I am really passionate about the construction space. I just don't know that my own humble opinion where the major industry opportunities are in the grain. That's where I think that there's a need for the big focus.
Okay, that you're right. Are you familiar with the Stabilization Act that's pending right now in the House? It's like it was brought on September 4th in front of the House for review, and it was been pending ever since. And it's the Hemp Market Economic Stabilization Act of 2020. And I feel like the grain discussion, while the hemp discussion as a whole is talked about in this the talk coming up, but the commodity of grain and the way that we access the wealth through the different chains that they will affect livestock, human consumption, all these other different areas of industries. I think the question that I posed in the chat about the decentralized finance effort kind of can talk to all those things too. But basically, I think the big catalyst to that is pending on that passing legislation. Other than that, the construction space, like the we're pretty confident about that. The past few discussions we've had,
Mhm.
though, that's immediately accessible. So I appreciate that acknowledgement there. But yeah, check out that Hemp Stabilization Act of 2020, along with the Safe Banking Act. I'm sure Mike will have some discussion around that. But yeah, I just wanted to chime in with that. Thanks.
Yeah, for sure. And I'd love to continue to move that along. I saw Andrew just logged on also, and I think Andrew will be able to kind of speak to what we were just mentioning. We were just talking about where market's headed and where my specific interest is as the association and grain compared to fiber and the financing and so forth. And so Michael, Andrew can probably, like I said, speak to it again. But I'd really like to get started. I'd love to introduce you guys to Michael. Michael's got a great background in banking and financing. And for the last, how many years now have you guys been working in cannabis and hemp?
Going on in our 7th year now.
Out of Colorado. And so I'll hand it over to Michael. For those of you that are joining or have not been on before, I think I recognize most of you, but feel free to share questions with a smaller group like this, being cautious and aware of the time we're spending talking. If I mute you or raise my hand, it's time to cut off, hit a timeout so we don't have runaway conversations. But I really encourage you guys to get involved in this discussion. The intent again is that we record this and you have access to it, but to get the discussion going so that we can move the needle. And so I'll turn it over to Michael. And then as you guys have questions, I can kind of help moderate them. You're welcome to add them to chat or raise your hand. There's an icon at the bottom of the screen. Take your mic off, wave your arms, whatever it is. But Michael, I'll turn it over to you guys. And, we'll keep it to an hour today at the most. We all have some other commitments we've got to get to, but wanted to open it up. So go ahead, Michael. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Mandy, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk to everybody today. Once again, my name is Michael O'Neill. I am a 20-year plus career guy in the banking industry, and most of that spent on the compliance realm. I'm a former Federal Reserve Bank examiner and took that experience and extrapolated it out into the private workplace. So I'm an equal opportunity employee. I work for banks and credit unions. And for the last 3.5 years, I have been working with the Safe Harbor Private Banking Program, which is a DBA of Partner Colorado Credit Union in Arvada, Colorado, here in the Denver metro area. And as I stated earlier, 7 years, the program we're in our 7th year now. We started banking cannabis in January of 2015. We started with 10 beta groups beta clients that we banked for the first quarter to sort of understand it. And I want to also put into the equation that we spent about 9 months prior to that investigating whether we would be willing to take the risk that goes with banking cannabis. And since that time, our program has grown quite a bit. I have over 500 accounts that are associated with the cannabis industry, that is licensed entities and ancillaries. And last year in 2020, we took in the equivalent in deposits of just a little over $3 billion from the cannabis industry. So we consider ourselves, when measured by deposit volume, one of the largest providers of banking services here in the United States. We do not bank just here in Colorado. While that was our focus for the first couple of years, as you know, as your companies are growing and the cannabis industry is growing, that we have multi-state operators. So we operate in a multitude of states, and we're expanding out even more so now. Now, I know we want to talk about hemp today, so I don't want to stay on the cannabis subject. So we started thinking about banking hemp when the Farm Act, the 2018 Farm Act came about. Obviously, we had the 2014 Farm Act that allowed the ability to start testing that product line, that particular agricultural vertical here in Colorado. And we had a lot of people that moved into that. And with that, we started developing a banking program for the hemp industry itself. And we based it off of guidelines based on the 2014 and 2018 requirements within the Farm Act, and based upon the interim rules that came out from the U.S. Department of Agriculture that came about with that. And then we formalized our program now that the final rules are out from the USDA. And just to also give you a background, I was asked to be part of the Colorado Hemp Advancement and Management Plan that was put together by Governor Polis here in Colorado. So I was part of the group that worked on insurance and banking for the industry. And that was part of our package that we submitted for our state hemp program. So, we've been doing this a while, and just so you know, we bank the spectrum for hemp. So we bank anywhere from production from farm all the way to retail or wholesale sales of CBD products, raw hemp. We're currently onboarding a new client that is going to be building a $10 million manufacturing facility back on the East Coast that, believe it or not, they're going to be taking hemp fabric. So they're going to be making, their first thing they're going to start making is car mats, believe it or not, made out of hemp fibers. So we run a plethora of what we do. And I'm sort of here to help sort of answer questions or concerns you might have within the banking industry itself. And I can sit here and talk all day, but I just really don't want to. I'd rather sort of take your questions and look at that. And, but I would want to make sure, one of the things I want to cover with you guys today, one of my points is, we're seeing our CBD clients starting to get into the THC 8, 10, 11, and versus the THC Delta 9, and want to caution you that we are, once again, there's a loophole within the rules for this, but we believe that spectrum is going to come about. In fact, the DEA, I believe, came out in 2020 and said they've got some rules that they're looking at saying that this is really in synthetic. And, so there's some problems that might be coming with that. So I'm not sure what the spectrum of the industry that you're using, but I would just caution you, because if that is reclassified and you're building a business model on that, you probably will be classified back into the cannabis side of it versus, the hemp side. So with that, I guess I'm ready to take some questions, some general questions, and go from there.
So we started a little bit of a conversation before about the Farm Bill or about the Safe Banking Act. I don't know if you can touch a little bit on that and what just came out. How is it really impacting the availability for banking and so forth? Yeah.
Well, I think, with the 2018 Farm Act, that we have to look at it that, according to the final rules, the hot spot, that hot test is moved from 0.5 to 1%. So, that spectrum is really narrow to where we define what is hemp and what is, more the cannabis that we, would facilitate and put you into a different spectrum. So, we as a program have built our program around that. For our farmers, we require you to give us your testing results from your state agricultural department or whoever within the state is doing the testing for you. For our manufacturers who are just doing extraction itself, we're looking for those laboratory tests that are showing that you're under that limit. For our retailers, we're doing the same thing. We want to see your labels. We want to make sure that you aren't making false advertisement claims such as, oh, this cures cancer, not that, or from the standpoint we're making medical claims that go against what the FDA says with the guidelines for advertising. But, the problem still is banks are seeing hemp as still being associated with with the cannabis side that requires licensure itself within the state. So trying to overcome that with a bank, whether they wish to take that risk, they're not sure how to price it. Just so you know, our program, we price out, it's $50 a month. Plus there's a fee for large deposit items that come in, but we try to keep that cost down. It's nowhere near the expense that we charge our cannabis clients, which is, I can assure you, a lot larger number than that. But from the aspect, when you're working with your bank, making sure that you have that transparency that we're looking on. When we built our program, we didn't know what to expect from our federal and state bank regulators, and so we built it based upon what we knew about cannabis. And since we started, we've pulled back some of the requirements, or as we refer to we pulled the belts and suspenders off of them and making it a little bit more easy to understand from the process of what we're looking for in partners in this space and what our requirements are. I think you also have to understand that this isn't normal agricultural banking yet. I mean, while this is a absolute legal agricultural product, from the standpoint, it's not pushing that way into the banking system at this point, So we've got to understand, as we normalize a little bit more, the more rules are in there, I think we'll see a little bit more lightening up on that. Now, based upon talking about the Safe Banking Act, the Safe Banking Act, from our perspective, it really doesn't do a lot, how should I say this? Let me rephrase that. When we look at the Safe Banking Act, we specifically look at the Money Laundering Control Act, Section 1957, which says when a financial institution accepts illicit funds, and illicit funds are sales from the cannabis industry because it's still illegal at the federal level, okay, that they could be held accountable for money laundering activities. And the thing is you've got to understand about the Money Laundering Control Act is that's the criminal statutes. That's not the banking regulatory statutes that we look at. So from our perspective, what it does is it allows a bank to now not be prosecuted for taking those cannabis funds But what it doesn't talk about is all the Bank Secrecy Act anti-money laundering requirements that still go into a high-risk cash-intensive business. Those rules are not going to be changing unless FinCEN, or the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, does rewrite some of those in concert with the Safe Banking Act. But we believe, from the standpoint that it still has to, there is still going to be that anti-money laundering connotation that stays within the cannabis and hemp spectrum, that we still have to agree to, that every financial institution in the United States has to follow the same set of rules. And I think we lost Mandy.
No, I'm here. That music game, I actually had a question about crypto and where crypto plays a role in all of this, especially in this industry, as so much of the track and trace is moving over to crypto, or what's your opinion, and where does that lie in all of this?
We are investigating. We've been doing a lot of research into the crypto space for quite some time now. And we are looking at taking on our first client in the crypto space, so that we can understand that particular vertical better than what we, because we're one of these companies that we like to investigate, take small step, think big, start small sort of concept, and understanding what we're getting into and building programs around that. Now, I think that, everybody's watched, Bitcoin soar, and everybody, a lot of the other cryptocurrencies that are soaring with that. A couple of weeks ago, there was a rumor mill that went out across the internet that the Federal Reserve Bank and the federal regulators were going to crack down on crypto, and you watch the price for Bitcoin going from 60-something thousand to 50-something thousand very quickly, just in the space of a few hours. So on a Sunday, we don't know about crypto, and if you're going to accept crypto, we feel that we have to understand where that ledger is. We don't like, bankers and regulators don't like the anonymity that is provided by crypto. Crypto, while a small bit of it is still used on the dark net, they say only about 2% of all crypto is used on the dark net, but we do know that it's used for nefarious purposes. So if you're thinking about using that for payment, understand where are you going to actually cash that out at some point, or what is the source of the funds behind there. Once again, we're in the very infancy of looking at crypto, and so I don't want to get too deep into what we do or what we don't do. We do have, there is a payment processor out there that is using you can go and use your debit card or credit card, and they're using Litecoin, okay? But they have bought a vault of it. So you're buying it from them, then you're turning back around and paying for your product with Litecoin, and then you're getting to keep a little bit of it. So think about it like a cashless ATM is sort of what it is, but they're selling the individual the cryptocurrency, but they're using that to purchase their product when they come back. So it's like you're buying like $100 worth of cryptocurrency, but you're buying the equivalent of $100 worth of product behind it.
Okay, so before we move on, I think that there may be some questions that come up, but I'd like real quick, Ross, if you would like to introduce yourself. I don't know if you have any feedback about what Michael has said. I saw you shaking your head a number of times, agreeing with what he was saying. And but yeah, I'd love to just kind of introduce you. Ross is a member of ours and a bank we work with as well. And so please, yeah, if you don't mind.
Nice to meet you, Ross.
You as well. Thank you for your comments. And Mandy's right. I was doing a lot of affirmative head shaking. So my name is Ross Sloan. I'm with West Helm Bank and Trust, and I work 100% in our hemp vertical. Our bank has a hemp banking division, purely hemp, not cannabis more broadly, at least at this point. And there's nothing that Michael has said that I would disagree with. It's very much in keeping with how we viewed things in our bank. And the only thing I might add is that in keeping with what he said about the Safe Banking Act, I do think it will provide some level of comfort for banks that have been reluctant to get into the hemp space.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But it's certainly not a panacea. It does not in any way relieve banks of requirements to ensure compliance. And so I think it may have some impact, but I don't see it as having a major impact for those of us that are already in the space. And again, all the compliance requirements will remain intact.
Thank you very much.
Couldn't agree with you more, Ross. And I'll also add on something there that I get a question about with Safe Banking Act is, we have a lot of our cannabis clients that we're automatically now going to get access to credit cards. And I was speaking with a good friend of mine probably about 2 weeks ago today, and he had just been on the phone with some of the top people at Visa. And Visa, in their discussion said, hey, until cannabis actually becomes legalized at the federal level, we're still not going to go down there, or much less allow ISOs to be able to access our electronic rails for credit card processing. Now, the good news is there are a couple of companies out there now that are allowing credit card sales for hemp products. Because once again, as I go back to, it's 100% legal agricultural product. And, until we get some rules around CBDs and that sort of thing from the FDA, we're going to still see that space grow. So.
Okay, well, thank you guys both. I'll open this up for questions from you guys right now. I see cameras coming on and off, but are there any questions that you guys have? I know Mike Miser, you had one earlier. I saw your hand up before you took it down.
Yeah, I had a point about the quality control of verifying the COAs that you base their legality on. What sort of methods do you have that discourage people from modifying COAs just to get by the system? As a reseller in the past, I've often come into the problem of, a few instances in the present where people not only might change the lower number to get through somebody's legal CBD line, but may inflate the THC numbers to be 30-some%, where biologically it's impossible for the plant to generate such a high number. I just want to verify, if you're so stringent upon the legalities to enter your system and you're deterred away from BTC and other crypto assets because of their nefarious purposes, what sort of, position do you elevate yourself to ensure that stays legal all around?
Wow. About 8 questions in there, Michael. So I'll try to answer it.
Nice to meet you, buddy.
From the standpoint that we are asking, it's a great question. I'm not sure that we've taken it that someone is going to give us a falsified report from their lab. But, we know the labs here in Colorado pretty much because we bank them already as part of our cannabis banking program. And, I would think, that we are getting the results directly from the labs, their lab results. So if someone is going in to tweak lab results and get around that to sell a product, and we found out we would very quickly close their accounts. Okay. But we have to have something in the honor system here. I can't sit here and monitor exactly every single batch. I'm not trying to say that we're asking for the analysis for every single batch, but what we're trying to do is make sure that we're holding our end of the requirements that the client is staying within that. I just had a client that I had to approve a large payment. That part of that payment was for THC Delta 8. Okay. And I'm sitting here going, so I reached out to the client and I said, look, I understand that this is a loophole within the rules. And, part of my job also deals with the gray of the regulations. I mean, because obviously, the Bank Secrecy Act rules were built to keep the cannabis industry, illegal, something that's illegal out of the financial system. But we have guidelines that we've been able to come up with. And we feel that our oversight is enough that, we go out and we visit our farmers. We go out and do site visits with our manufacturers. We go and look on, we're following up. We have a monitoring system and validation that allows us to look that funds coming in were derived from the proceeds of a legal sale. We are on sites, when with COVID, it's been virtual, where we would go out and we would actually visit with people. We form those relationships with people. And like I said, if we find out, it's like with any other client within a bank, that you're doing something illegal, you're not going to last very long. So I'm hoping that sort of answers your questions, Michael. I mean, you talked about something about biological. I'm sorry, I'm not a biochemist or a botanist, so I'm not going to really try to go down that path and answer that question. So
I think has to be accountability back to the person opening the account at some point, and you checking your due diligence to see that they're providing the documents does not necessarily, it makes sense, I guess, that it wouldn't be a matter of figuring out if the COA is biologically matches the actual crop. But it is definitely a topic that continues to come up all the time within this industry. And I see Jason's on when we talk about the track and trace and credibility of what's what makes sense.
I'll go back that Mandy, I'll say that the CHAMP initiative here in Colorado, one of our recommendations from the banking industry was that we have online access from the state agency itself. And that is something that the state is working on here for the state of Colorado for us, that we can effectively, instead of getting something third party, we can effectively go straight to the state agency that's doing the testing, and that testing information is available online.
Awesome. Okay, any other questions? Gerald, I see your camera came on. Did you have anything you want to add?
No, thank you for inviting me. I actually just came back from the state of New York. And that was an interesting experience. I have actually a friend of mine who's a huge cannabis hemp farmer in the Hamptons in Sag Harbor, named David Falkowski. So I'm just trying to understand the whole compliance thing because they're still going through the motions. And what's interesting, they kind of pointed the arrow back to Colorado in regards to compliance as far as like a general template. So I'm just trying to get more of the feel of the business because I've had a lot of people approach me, particularly more in the Northeast, in regards to compliance issues on a federal basis and how they can mirror that and continue about their life and generating the business and on a legal and ethical perspective. So just trying to get more indulged in it.
Well, thank you. Anybody has anything else they'd like to add or any feedback? Any questions? Go ahead.
Could I step in?
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Kevin. Right after Kevin is Matthew.
Okay, I'm sorry but I had a question for you, Michael. My business is in the waste. I collect the waste from businesses, cannabis and hemp. Why is it that I'm not classified as an ancillary, non-plant touching, that I can't get any services from a bank for real estate finance?
Well, I can't speak for your bank and what their policies and procedures might be, Kevin. I can tell you the good thing is we do offer real estate based loans for Safe Harbor. So we have been loaning to the cannabis and the hemp space now for over a year. And we're expanding that program out exponentially. So I think it's one of those pieces there they're wondering why you're not classified as ancillary. We sort of look at it in the cannabis industry. We sort of do tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. So tier 1 is someone who's licensed plant touching, Tier 2 is, your electrician, your plumber, your lighting company. It could be, it's a trim company, where they come and trim the buds. And then tier 3 being more the lawyers, sort of accounting sort of thing, that they're not making a lot, they're sort of touching the industry, but it's not their main source of revenue. I would think if you were looking at our program, that we would not be looking at it that you weren't an ancillary. We would just classify you probably as a hemp company. I don't know enough about your business to actually make a 100% qualification, but I would say that you would fall underneath that. Oops, oh, there you went. You moved over. Sorry, Kevin. I thought we lost you. From the standpoint, or maybe you sort of meet one of our commercial bank, account guidelines. But once again, without knowing enough about your business, I'm sorry, I just can't make that determination. So.
Thank you for that input. Can I reach out to you? I just connected on LinkedIn. I'd like to talk to you about that possibility.
Sure. Mandy's got my contact information, and anybody can reach out to us. We are,
Great.
We offer our program. We're just not just Colorado. So we look at a lot of different states. And, I just will tell you about our program that we're intrusive bankers from the standpoint, because we want to know what your business is, how you operate your business. It's not a normal commercial account, and it was never designed to be such, because we have federal and state regulators that come to us and require us to also look at this from a different mindset. Because remember, you're just a few points and a few decimal points from being cannabis, defined as cannabis. Okay. So our regulators, they have worries about, cross-contamination. Maybe somebody's growing hemp, but they're actually throwing some cannabis plants in the middle of their field and doing some other, that they might be doing that. Once again, we don't look at it that way, but from an anti-money laundering stance, we have to look at what's worst case and build ourselves back out of that worst case scenarios through risk mitigation. And part of that with our program is we're asking a lot of questions. We ask for a lot of documentation that normally wouldn't come about. And we hope at some point this will just become a normal business. But until our regulators quit looking so deeply, we need to make sure that we have oversight of our clients. So I think, Matthew, you had something that you were wanting to say. I'm sorry, I sort of cut you off there.
No, sure. It's a question for either you or Ross, but I work for a company that makes large industrial hemp dryers, IAC Thermo. Could you sort of speak to where you guys are at with loaning on equipment, financing equipment?
Yeah, at this point, it's not something that we're looking at, Matthew. We're dipping our toes into this, and we started on the cannabis side, and you've got to remember that when we look at cannabis, we have to worry about, compensation of property. And our regulator, I think it was almost a year or maybe a little bit more of us going back and forth with our regulator going, here's how we'd like to do this. Them looking, our regulator looking at the risk mitigations that we were putting into place, the overall processes that we were putting together and policies, and they're comfortable currently doing real estate back, commercial real estate is what so that's what we're focused on right now. We've branched out now into construction loans, and we hope at some point, like I said, this will become a normal loan function. But until we can go through the regulator hurdles and get this a little bit more in tune, I'm not sure. We're not currently offering equipment loans, though. Because I think what, once again, I'm speaking as a former lender, that when I look at that, what would the other, so you're talking about an industrial dryer, right? What other purpose might that serve if I'm lending on that? If I had to retrieve that collateral, so from my perspective as a credit union, I wouldn't know what to do with it. We would have to sell it and we would have to sell it at whatever the price we would be able to gain, hopefully enough to repay the loan. But if that's not the case, then we would suffer a loss. And, you've got to remember that credit unions are member owned. So we don't, our stockholders are our members. So we always try to look at things, what's best for our members and how do we protect their funds that they've entrusted us with.
Real quick, thank you very much. And I want to turn it over real quick to Ross, because I know you guys are doing financing in this space as well. Do you mind speaking to that a little bit? And the reason I'm going back and forth, just so both of you know, is I really want to give both of you opportunity and people that are listening to have a valid, good, solid connection. And so, yeah, go ahead, Ross.
And I appreciate that, but I also want to be respectful for Michael and not hijack his presentation. So, but I will speak to the financing piece briefly, and echo a lot of what Michael said. I don't want to speak for all banks, but I think one of the challenges with regard to credit and financing in the hemp/cannabis space, and again, our bank is specifically in the hemp space, is that a lot of the companies in the space are nascent companies. I mean, a lot of the companies started after the 2018 Farm Bill, and irrespective of industry, banks typically like to see a few years of track record of a business in order to lend. So it's not just industry related, it is also the fact that a lot of the companies are fairly new. That said, we do make equipment loans, we do entertain equipment loans. Our financing in the hemp space is done through government guaranteed loans. We work both through the USDA and the SBA. A lot of folks are unaware that the SBA does actually have protocol for hemp, the hemp industry. So we do, the short answer is we do entertain them. We use government guaranteed loan programs to do that.
Awesome. Go ahead. Yeah. Did you have another question before I
No,
call?
yeah. I mean, we work with folks, but a lot of the times those terms are pretty brutal for folks that are willing to lend into the space. And so just always looking to learn more about our options.
Right. Man, I just saw, I won't, that's the subject I probably shouldn't talk about. So I would just say, yes, hot money lending is something that unfortunately is happening not only in the hemp industry, but for the cannabis industry. And financing is extremely, can have very terms that are tough to meet. But I'm glad to say that our real estate program does offer terms more on a commercial lending spectrum than you would normally see, that we've normally seen in the years past for financing options outside, of a financial institution.
Okay, awesome. Aaron, I saw you had your hand up. I keep pointing in the wrong direction.
That's okay. Hi, my name is Erin Riley. I'm an attorney out of Boston, Massachusetts, and I do mostly policy, public policy work and lobbying. And my question is about valuation of assets. In Massachusetts, I have experience in the liquor license industry, and a lot of liquor license owners can leverage that license with a value in order to qualify for, lines of credit with the bank and things like that and financing. And I was wondering, in cannabis, there seems to be, especially with regard to cannabis and hemp companies that are up and coming, an interest in trying to do that with a financial institution, and no one seems to be biting because the license itself is hard to value. So I just wanted to see if you've seen that in any other parts of the country, or if that's something that you think may be a possibility going forward, in your opinion, or something that seems totally sort of out of the realm of possibility.
I think, licenses, when we look at it from the alcohol industry, I'll just use the state of Wyoming as an example. Mandy and I are both alumni from the University of Wyoming there, in case y'all didn't know that. And so in Wyoming, liquor licenses are given out based on population. Okay. And I happen to have a good friend of mine that owns two up in Laramie, Wyoming. Actually, Mike owns three, and they are considered personal property. Okay, as long as you're paying your annual fee on it, it is considered personal property, and you can sell that license. And my understanding is, depending on how badly somebody wants one, they can go upwards of $500,000. Now, based upon cannabis licenses, my experience is the majority of states are year-to-year license. So it's not something, so you have to actually reapply for that license and be approved by the state. Now, just because you have the cannabis license, I'll use Colorado to be even more specific. Colorado requires you that licenses with a particular location. Okay, it's assigned to, and you have to get a change in location, a change in ownership that has to go through the Marijuana Enforcement Division. So I don't know how you would value a license from a financial institution perspective, particularly if it's only good for a year. And if I've got it, that's great. But what I don't have a production facility. I don't have a dispensary to put forth my product through, or a wholesale distribution. So I'm not sure, I don't know. Now, I have seen, in the state of Florida, Florida, I believe it was, you had to put up 2 million or 2.5 million in a bank account just to qualify to apply for a license and be approved. And there was a story, I'm not saying anything that's insider information or private information. There was a news story that someone took one of those licenses and as soon as they got it, within 30 days, turned around and sold it for $40 million. So, so that valuation, I think, is with Ross, you'll agree. The valuation is what somebody's willing to pay versus, a tangible asset that we can put something on. So I'm sorry, that's a roundabout way to answer your question, Aaron, but currently it is not something that we are taking into consideration to loan against. So.
Yeah,
Thank you. That's helpful, actually.
Yeah, I'd echo that. I think there's just too many variables that could impact the value of that license, including legislative action. There's still a lot of unknowns from a legislative standpoint. And then you look at, it's a different industry entirely, but you look at what happened to taxi medallions in New York City. Uber. So you have a completely unexpected circumstance that made those medallions worth maybe a tenth of what they'd been worth previously. And that's probably got the attention of a lot of banks as well.
Right. Thank you, Ross. I was literally going to bring up taxi medallions because, there was a big credit union, once again, public information in New York City, that was taking those, and they were valued of upwards of $1 million. And then we have that disruptive technology, i.e. Uber and Lyft, that came through and just knocked those things. They were worth maybe $100,000 at most. And there were a lot of people that had leveraged those licenses, and they were then callable. And, it ruined some people's lives on that. So.
Gerald, I saw you have another question. I cut you off earlier and moved on, so I'm coming back. Sorry.
No, thank you. Actually, I have two. One, which you guys already kind of answered. I wanted to know what the impact was on your financing or loan banking when it comes to corporate governance, because I come from an M&A, legal, and corporate tax background, so I just kind of wanted to understand that part in regards to cannabis, because there was a lot of issues. For instance, I do a lot of bankruptcy cases, Chapter 11s, and cannabis comes out when in receivership. And again, the biggest issue was the real estate and the leasing issues, and why was it put there in the first place, and and the zoning issues on that. So do you guys give loans on, like, how does that impact like loan financing? Like if one wants to incorporate a company to basically to generate or run a cannabis business. I just kind of want to more, because it was a lot of challenges in that, especially in California where I'm at. So my question is, like, if I want to start a company, should I incorporate it in California or Colorado that could actually do business in cannabis across the nation, or what is the most strategic and most safest way to go about it?
Not sure I can answer that specifically to that type of question, Gerald, but one of the things is because you mentioned some corporate governance in there. Our program is, approved by our board of directors, and they understand the risk that we are taking when we do that. One of the ways that we mitigate that risk is we started only loaning to clients that had been with us for like 2 years. So we knew their financial wherewithal, and this was, and as you might guess, there's a lot of people that have a separate real estate company and then lease it to the actual licensee, so it might be in a holding company function, and it might be in a service company function, but they're holding, the real estate is actually owned outside of the license. Or we have people that, it's both, or they've got a separate, LLC that once again owns the real estate and that leases back, they lease the space back to their licensed entity. So, and we also do so because we offer, we do not have a very high loan to value. So we're making sure, so if there was default, we have a lot of equity that is already being placed in there. So when we're looking at it, we're understanding somebody's business cash flow and their ability to repay. It could be, we have certain people where we have high net worth individuals that are more than willing to be personal guarantors on the loan. And we know that, they have, a lot of money.
Right.
And, so the wherewithal to actually pay that loan back, should it be callable. The bad thing is we still have to look at confiscation, because, if somebody is unfortunately taking something out the back door and it's taken over by a law enforcement agency, it's one of those that you're guilty until proven innocent at that point with the way the laws work. But while our loan is still secured, all of a sudden it becomes non-performing, from a regular, from a banking standpoint. As Ross will tell you, we don't like non-performing loans on our portfolios.
Right.
So we have to make sure that we're taking all of these pieces of the puzzle in. And just so you know, I am not the lender on this. I run the cannabis banking program. So it's run out, it's sort of outside of my wheelhouse, but I'm part of the program to do the referrals and that sort of thing and help with, pieces, talking to clients and that sort of thing. But that's the way that we have sort of built our program, and we'll continue to finesse that program, just like any other financial institution would, that as times change, as somebody just said, as Ross just said, what happens if this all becomes legal? What if we've got declassification, that cannabis becomes hemp? That there is no more, controlled substance classification, that we have to worry about. Change is a whole game changer, but it still goes back to high intensity, high risk cash intensive business. So it's still going to be regulated. Even if like hemp, cannabis will be highly regulated by federal and state authorities, just as alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. I'm just saying, because there's a propensity, unless there's some sort of change in our view of how that works. But I don't see that coming, at least while I'm still serving this industry.
And does your cannabis program, are companies that want to do licensing, like in regards to intangible assets, do you guys support that as well? Is that legible to get cannabis?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
So do you guys support intangible assets in regards to, like, if someone wants to start a cannabis licensing company, like when it regards to intellectual property, if they want, cloning strains for, like, I don't know, like for certain figures who want to sell cannabis in that respect?
I'm still sorry, I'm not following your thought. I currently, Gerald, I'll go back. Currently, we offer commercial real estate loans and construction loans for the industry, and that's our spectrum right now.
That's what duly.
Yeah. So, I mean, those are decisions that are going to be making it a pay grade much higher than mine. I'll just leave it at
Duly noted. No, thank you.
that.
Thank you.
Can you hear me now? Frank, as soon as, real quick, Ram is on the phone real quick and has messaged me with a question. Ram, I don't know if you can hear, and then Frank, I'll turn it over to you. He messaged me on LinkedIn and was like, please, let's see if he can hear. If not, go ahead, Frank. And then Ram, if you can hear me, if you want to get on next, I'd love to hear from you. But go ahead, Frank.
So I was answering your question that just happened at the moment ago here. So when you have a lease space or you have buying the place where your product is being sold or wherever it's being manufactured at, state of Michigan and multiple states require that that they approve either the lease, they approve the location, they approve in cities, they approve every piece of land on that. So when going to the bank or going to any financial institution to do so, the first and primary aspect is that the state regulators have the first right to approve that. And once that happens, if you have liability issues where in turn it goes in defaults, they're not giving that license out to anybody else. That location becomes defaulted. And so that becomes non-usable. It cannot go to another party. It has to go back through the entire process again. And literally, as was just shared, it becomes a loan default. And I just dealt with that with a group of clients at this moment within the last 3 weeks ago. And it's just, and unfortunately, the onerous aspects, and I think that was one question, the onerous aspects of both lending, the onerous aspects of the leasees or leasors, depending, it's an expensive industry, and because it's very cash rich at this point, you'll find it from there. So that was that's my comment.
Thanks, man.
Thank
I
you.
agree with you. You're absolutely right. Once again, while that license might seem tangible, and there's a lot of other pieces that come with it. Because okay, great. Now that you've got it, what do you do with it? So.
Well, they don't give licenses out. I mean, they just don't hand it to be sold. It's not, at least in Michigan, it's not, and I know in other states, it's based on the specific of a person. It's based on a location, and it's either used. It's not a tradable like a liquor license. Not tradable. So thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so Ram, I see that you're off of mute. I'm going to put a poll up real quick so that I know, for those of you that are left, how can we support you? What do you need from us as far as information about the association? Click the button, exit out of it, whatever you want. But Ram, go ahead.
Hi, Mandy. Thank you. Thanks for giving me and unmuting me a couple of minutes here. So good afternoon, everybody. I was listening to all the conversation here, and it's a great conversation, great information for everybody involved here who are supporting this industry. So give you a little bit of background on myself. I work with Bank of the West. I'm based here in California, Southern California. And Bank of the West does have a very robust industrial hemp platform where we are onboarding clients for banking. And our ag department, which is our agriculture department, does do financing for tractors and machines and stuff like that. It's it is a growing segment in our bank. But I am glad to share this information with you all that if, anybody is looking for a hemp or CBD platform, solid bank, Bank of the West is the bank to go. The only problem that I am facing right now is that a lot of hemp clients does have a secondary business that is the cannabis business. And I'm having really a challenge on that part because the BSA AML policies, are clearly comes in effect when one customer who has a hemp business and at the same time he's also involved in a cannabis business. So when the backgrounds are done and backgrounds are checked, something pops up, we cannot onboard that client. So my conversation on this matter is asking Michael in particular a question. Michael, how is your credit union dealing with that?
Oh, well, once again, we have a very robust cannabis banking program. So we actually, what happens is if someone is entering the hemp CBD space on that is a licensed cannabis, we actually put we include that account in their portfolio that our private banker model, their private banker actually oversees. And then from the standpoint, if it's separate from any licensing and separate ownership, it goes over to my ancillary banker model. So, what we try to do is we are a full service spectrum, except for, the ability to, we're not loaning on equipment or anything along that line. And just so you know, I'm very good friends with your senior BSA officer at Bank of the West. In fact, she was part of the CHAMP program with me here in Colorado. So I understand your program and everything else, but we do offer accounts, once again in California and across the country, and we're more than happy to speak to anyone that might be able to do it. We don't guarantee you an account, but we definitely will look at it. The good thing is we don't charge you the application fee unless we open your account.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, and so we don't as well. Bank of the West does not charge any processing fee or any application fee, whereas I find some clients, paying $1,000 to $2,000 application processing fee for the hemp or CBD accounts, and then it's not guaranteed that they will get an account, and it's non-refundable. So I want to do the right thing for the clients. I mean, these businesses are growing; they are struggling. We don't want to charge them, a couple of grand there for doing nothing. So thank you for sharing that. I do have some clients that I will be talking to you offline here that I can send out to you. But anybody else on the call, you're welcome. Yes, Mandy.
that's all right. I've got to call timeout because we're out of time, and I know that Michael has to head out here in just a second, and so I want to give him but I will stay on the call. If you guys have future questions or if you guys would like to discuss, you're welcome to. But I know that Michael has a hard stop right now and has to head out. And I want to tell him and say goodbye and thank you.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Michael.
Well, I want to thank Mandy and the Global Hemp Association for making time for us here today. I just will tell you, I'll leave you with this. When you're working with your bank, be transparent. Okay, just understand we aren't wanting to do what we're doing. It's as Ross will nod his head in concurrence here, it's an expense for us to have this much oversight. But we're being forced by regulatory, sort of forces to make sure that we're doing everything to comply with not only the Farm Act, but within the anti-money laundering spectrums and our own internal policies and procedures. So I would just tell you, just be very, transparent with your banker, form a partnership. That's what we try to tell everybody. They're not our clients. They're not our, while they're our members, we understand that, but there are our partners in this, because we can't do what we do in the banking space without partnership, because we are coming to you, the industry, sometimes to help us to find those solutions to those issues that we're finding as hurdles. So please feel free to look us up. Our website is shfinancial.org. So from the standpoint of SAFE, it stands for safeharborfinancial.org. We have a great way there. You can apply for accounts through our website that we can look at. Once again, we are a full spectrum banking service. So we offer checking, savings, money market accounts, debit cards, online banking, wire services, ACH, We do ACH originations, we do payrolls. So we try to make sure that we offer a full service spectrum across the board. And I'd be glad to talk to any of you. You can get my information from Andy offline after this. And once again, thank you so much for your time. And I'm sorry I've got to go, but I've got another Zoom that is starting right now. So
I can get you out of here. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time. I will, for those of you, just so you know, also, Michael, I'll send information out in the follow-up email for everybody that registered as was on today. Thank you.
bye now.
Absolutely. So if there's any other questions, welcome to open up. Ross, thank you very much for staying on or joining as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so if you guys, like I said, we can leave it on. Our next meeting that I do have scheduled, I believe, is next Tuesday. Let me check though before I say that out loud. Otherwise, next Thursday. Nope, next Thursday is our education, and then next Friday is our textile meeting. The Friday meeting, usually we host in the afternoon, is going to be in the morning because I have a guest from the UK talking about the track and trace and traceability for textiles. And so that's there. But yeah, I open it up for any questions, any other comments, Ross, you have, or anybody. Ram, if you and Ross like to continue. Yeah. Otherwise, I'll sign off and we can be done. I guess we'll sign off. Nobody raising hands. Absolutely. Thank you very, very much, you guys. Ross, let's get on the phone and kind of collaborate also how we can continue to move this forward as well.
Be great. Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Great conversation.
Thank you, Kevin. Talk soon.
Thank you, guys.